I've got a bunch of tips and tricks for you to get the most out of your iPad. This video is sponsored by Paperlike. Let's get into it. Let's start by talking about the home screen and the dock. You can turn off recent apps to get more space in your dock. Go into Settings, Home Screen and Multitasking, and turn off Show Suggested and Recent Apps. This will give you an extra 3 spots in your dock. iPadOS has a built-in screenshot utility. There are a few different ways of capturing a screenshot. First, you can click the lock and up volume button at the same time. Second, you can use the Apple Pencil and swipe in from the bottom left corner. Third, you can use the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-3 and Command-Shift-4. The first will put the screenshot in a stack in the bottom corner. The second will open directly into the screenshot editor. In the screenshot editor, you have a few different tools. First, you can crop the screenshot to show just the content you want. Second, you can tap on the live text button at the top to make any text in the screenshot highlightable. You can then copy and paste that text to wherever you want. This is super handy if you have some text in an app that can't be selected, but you need to paste it someplace else. Third is markup tools. You see this option throughout the OS. This is a set of tools you can use your Apple Pencil with. This includes a pen, highlighter, pencil eraser, object selector, and ruler for drawing straight lines. And of course, there are color options as well. Under the plus button, there are options to add to the screenshot. This includes descriptions, text, signature, shapes, and more. Under the More menu, you have the option to have this toolbar auto-minimize or even turn on Draw with Finger. In the screenshot editor, there's a share sheet and delete icon for sending stuff to different places when you're done editing. But the feature I use the most is under the Done menu. You can choose where to save screenshots from here, but a lot of times I just need them temporarily. So I select Delete and Copy. This adds them to the clipboard so I can send them to whoever I need to. Spotlight is the launcher of iPadOS and how I navigate the system quickly. You can activate Spotlight by pulling down on the command screen. If you're using a keyboard, you can hit Command Space to activate Spotlight anywhere in the OS, even when you have an app open. The core of Spotlight is for opening apps and files quickly. You can search for any app name or file here. When searching for an app name, you can drag and drop it to add it to multitasking. This works in both Split View and Stage Manager, but more on that in a bit. Spotlight can also be used for web searches as well. This is how I primarily start a web search. There's a lot of stuff you could search for using Spotlight. Music from the Music app, photos from your local photo album. This can use the same search parameters as the photo app, so you can search for things like mountains or dogs or people that you have set up in the Photos app. You can also search for weather reports, emails from the Mail app, location and business information, and more. In Spotlight, you can ask it to do calculations. You can also use Spotlight to do conversions for measurements as well. You can even start a timer. Just type Start Timer and select the duration. Spotlight can even run shortcuts. Control Center is the place where you quickly change settings and features for the OS. You can get to Control Center by swiping down on the top right corner or pushing the cursor into that same corner. You can also hit Globe C to get to Control Center. In Control Center, you can change basic stuff like volume and brightness levels, toggling Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular, and airplane mode. Nothing too surprising there. But what's really handy is the Now Playing widget. You can control playback from here. But if you tap on the AirPlay icon in the top right, you can change the audio playback destination. This can be changed from the iPad speakers to headphones, Bluetooth speakers, and of course HomePods and AirPods. Under the picker for the playback destination, you have an option for controlling playback on other devices. For example, if I have music playing on some HomePods, I can use this to control that playback to skip a song or change the volume. If you have multiple HomePods, you can select all of them here and create a group. I do this often so I can play a podcast throughout my house. In Control Center, you can enable rotation lock. This is pretty handy if you're giving a presentation and don't want your iPad rotating around. Speaking of giving a presentation, the button next to rotation lock is screen mirroring. This allows you to mirror your iPad's display wirelessly to something like an Apple TV. Really great for showing off something to a room of people. You can go into Settings, Control Center, and add and remove items from Control Center. There's some pretty handy stuff in here, like home controls, Apple TV remote, music recognition, screen recordings, accessibility shortcuts, hearing, which allows you to control the system background audio feature, timers, keyboard brightness for controlling the Magic Keyboard's backlighting, and a lot more. This video is sponsored by Paperlike. Paperlike is one of my favorite iPad accessories. I have it on both of my iPads. It's a matte screen protector that gives it kind of this textured feeling. This way, when you're using the Apple Pencil, it feels like you're writing with a pencil and a piece of paper. It doesn't have that plastic on glass feeling that, I don't know about you, I just don't like that. It's a much better overall feel if you're somebody that uses the Apple Pencil. The new version of the Paperlike focuses on improving screen quality. It's much clearer compared to previous designs so that the bright, crisp display of the iPad really shines through. Because the Paperlike is a matte screen protector, you also get the added bonus of it cutting down on light reflection when working outside or when you have a big light directly shining on your iPad. Paperlike is a great accessory for any iPad setup. I will put a link in the description below so you can go check it out. My thanks to Paperlike for sponsoring this video. There are two multitasking systems built into iPadOS, and in my opinion, that's one too many. The first is Split View. This one works with any modern iPad and is fairly straightforward. When you have an app open, you can just drag and drop another app to the left or the right, and the two apps will be tiled next to each other. You can drag an app from the dock, app library, or even Spotlight. Once you have the two apps in Split View, you can drag the handle in different directions to position the apps and resize them. In Split View multitasking, there is another option for adding an app. This is Slide Over. Slide Over is a compact floating window. Just drag an app icon to the center of the screen. You'll see it become a tall, skinny window. If it pushes the app you have open to one side, you moved it too far and that will become Split View. One thing to note is you have to have a full screen app open or two apps in Split View in order to use Slide Over. You can't start it from the home screen. I like Slide Over for apps like music or Mastodon clients, calculators, and calendars. Apps that I reference information quickly or run something from, but then just dismiss. I don't need them to be a full screen app. Speaking of, you can dismiss the Slide Over window by grabbing the menu bar icon and sliding it to the right. If you swipe in from the right side or push the cursor into that side, the Slide Over will come back. You can also push a Slide Over window to the left. If you pull down on the menu bar icon, it will take that Slide Over window and put it into Split View. You can also control multitasking by using the menu option at the top. This gives you options to add an app to Split View, remove an app, put an app in Slide Over, or even completely close one. Stage Manager is the other multitasking system. This is a windowing style system. It requires a 3rd through 6th generation iPad Pro or a M1 iPad Air. It's off by default, but you can enable it through Control Center. With Stage Manager, you can have up to 4 windows active at the same time. You can resize these windows and move them around to predefined points. To add an app to what is called a stage, you drag and drop it just like you would with Split View. You can grab a corner with a cursor or the labeled corner with your finger and resize the window. You can also drag the window by grabbing the top of it and moving it around the UI. There are predefined points though, so the windows are not freely resizable and are not freely movable. Stage Manager has some major flaws, and honestly, I mostly stick with Split View. I will talk about the one exception in a bit. I did a massive video on iPadOS 16, and about half of that video is dedicated to how Stage Manager works. So instead of repeating myself, I will put a link to that in the description below so you can check it out. Despite whatever multitasking system you use, you can get to the app switcher. Swipe up from the bottom of the iPad or 3-finger swipe up on the trackpad. Here you can quickly jump between your recent workspaces. If you use Split View multitasking, you can add apps into pairs from here. You cannot do this for Stage Manager though. Also, for Slide Over, it gets its own app switcher system. You can also long press on an app icon to select Show All Windows. This will display all the windows for that app despite whatever stage or space they are currently open in. With an app open, you can swipe along the bottom edge of the iPad to jump between recent apps. You can swipe to the right to go back. There are some great keyboard shortcuts for using multitasking. For both multitasking systems, you can use Command H to go directly home, Command W to close the current window, Command M to minimize the current window, Globe Up will get you to the app switcher, Globe Down arrow to see all the windows of that current app, Globe Left or Right arrow will jump between the recent apps, and Command Tab will cycle through your last 9 apps and the home screen. For split view, you can use Control Globe Left or Right arrow to push a window to the side and add an app to split view. For Stage Manager, Globe F will make an app full screen. Control Globe Up arrow will give you the app picker to add an app to the current stage. Globe Back quote will cycle through the apps in your current stage. It will not take you out of that stage. You can see a list of all the system-wide keyboard shortcuts by holding down the globe key on your keyboard. I mentioned there was one exception to when I use Stage Manager, and that is when I plug my iPad into an external monitor. That is because you have to use it here. There is no split view. Proper external monitor support is available on the 5th and 6th generation iPad Pros, along with the 5th generation iPad Air, or basically any of the iPads with the M series chips. You can see what generation your iPad is under Settings, General, About. When you plug an iPad into an external monitor, you must have a keyboard and mouse attached. This can be the Magic Keyboard or third-party setup. If you have an iPad that doesn't support proper external monitor setup, you can still plug it into a monitor, but it will just mirror what is on your device and won't be full screen. Like Stage Manager, I did a detailed video already about how external monitor support works, and I will link that in the description below. The Apple Pencil is one of the pieces of the iPad that makes it stand out. I can't draw, but I use it a lot for navigating when using my iPad outside of a keyboard and mouse, and handwriting notes. Speaking of handwriting notes, one interesting feature of the Apple Pencil is Scribble. This allows you to handwrite text with the Apple Pencil in places that would normally only accept typed text. It will then convert that handwritten text into typed text. If you or the system gets something wrong, you can scratch out that text and it'll be erased. You can then go back and rewrite it. Scribble works really well, but for me, I can type faster than I can handwrite, so it's not something I use often. If you have the 2nd generation Apple Pencil, you can double tap on the bottom portion of it to jump between your current tool and the eraser. You can go into Settings, Apple Pencil, and change how this works. There are options to switch it to the latest tool you used instead of the eraser, show the color palette, or show the ink attributes, or you can just turn off that button press altogether. With the Apple Pencil, you can tap on a locked iPad screen to get a new note. This way you can quickly jot down a note and move on. You won't be able to access any other notes or apps until you completely unlock the iPad. I love this feature. You can change how quickly this switches to a new note or a note you recently were working on in Settings, Notes, Access Note from Lock Screen. Speaking of the Notes app, you have full access to markup tools here. But one cool addition for people like me is when you are drawing a shape, if you press and hold, it will convert whatever you drew into a perfect version of that. Super nice because I can't even draw a straight line. Like I mentioned a bit ago, with the Apple Pencil, you can swipe in the bottom left corner to activate the screenshot utility. But if you swipe in the bottom right corner, this will activate Quick Note. Quick Note is a window that hooks into the Notes app. Here you can quickly handwrite a note or type out a note. It will be saved to the Notes app in a Quick Note folder. In a Quick Note, you can attach a screenshot of whatever is currently on your device. If you have something like a web page or an email open, you can attach it to the note as a link. When you tap on it, the iPad will jump to that content. If you were to go back to that content without going through Quick Note, you will see a box in the bottom right-hand corner. Tap on this and it will open to that Quick Note right away with the note that it is linked to. So this way you can see all the notes that you wrote about that content. In Safari, you can select text and tap on it to create a quick note. When you use that link to go back to that page, it will highlight the text you have selected. You also have access to all of the markup tools as well. In Quick Note, you can swipe between the notes that are in the Quick Note folder. This makes it a great place to store notes that you are constantly adding to. You can also grab the window and move it around the screen. The software keyboard has a few tricks up its sleeve. If you have a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, you get a full-size keyboard, while the other iPads have a more compact design. On any of the software keyboards, you can pull down on the software keys to get the alternate key for that button. Pinch the keyboard to get a more compact version of it. This is just like the iPhone's keyboard, but you're able to move it around the screen and adjust its position. You can even do the swipe to type gesture if you prefer that. Let's talk about hardware keyboard support for the iPad. Obviously, there is the Apple keyboards like the Magic Keyboard you can use, but you can also pair Bluetooth keyboards and use wired keyboards as well. One annoyance when using the hardware keyboard with the iPad, though, is this keyboard bar. Honestly, I don't even know why it's here. You can drag it to one side and it will minimize it and push it out of the way. You can also then grab it and move it to the other side as well. Alternatively, you can go into Settings, General, Keyboard, and turn off Shortcuts and Predictive to make this go away completely. But this does turn off those features for the software keyboard as well. In Settings, General, Keyboard, Hardware Keyboard, you can remap the modifier keys. On the Magic Keyboard, I mapped the Caps Lock key to be the Escape key. Just a quick side note, anywhere in the OS on any keyboard, Command plus period acts as an escape key. On my mechanical keyboards, I've mapped the Caps Lock key to be the globe key because that's such an important key for iPadOS. In any application, you could hold down the Command key to see all the keyboard shortcuts for that app, just like how you can hold down the globe key to see system-wide keyboard shortcuts. On any hardware keyboard, you can hit Command-Control-Space to get the emoji picker. Globe N will open Notification Center. Globe C will open Control Center. You can double press the Control key to activate dictation. If you're using a trackpad with your iPad, there's a few handy gestures. First, you can 3-finger swipe up to get to the app switcher. You can 3-finger swipe to the right to get to previous apps. 3-finger swipe to the left to go back through apps. When using a mouse or trackpad, you may notice the long press menu is different if you right-click. This is more accustomed to the Mac with a proper list-style menu. On the iPad, there are a few gestures for doing system-wide features. You can 3-finger swipe to the left to undo your recent action. You can then 3-finger swipe to the right to redo that action. You can then 3-finger tap to get the undo, redo, and cut, copy, and paste menu. When watching a video, you may see this icon, or if a video is playing in an app and you close it, the video will go into a picture-in-picture mode. You can pinch and zoom to make this window bigger or smaller. You can also move this window around to different portions of the screen. Like all of Apple's platforms, there are some interesting tidbits hidden in settings. If you have a 2018 or 2020 11-inch iPad Pro or one of the iPads with the M series chip, you can go into Settings, Display and Brightness, Display Zoom, and turn on More Space. This runs your iPad at a higher resolution. I really like this. It gives you a lot more space to work with. If you want things to be bigger, not smaller, you can also enable Zoom here. If you have another browser besides Safari installed, you can go into Settings, scroll down until you see that app, and in there you can set it to be the default web browser. All links will open here now. You can also do the same process with email apps. This will open any Mail To links in that app. Some iPads have the new rotation volume button. This puts the volume up on the right side when in landscape mode. You can go into settings, sounds, and turn this off, but I will say I got used to this and really like it. The Files app has gotten a lot better over the years. It's still not quite on par with Finder, but it is getting there. When you have a file selected, you can hit the spacebar to preview it. In icon view, you can use the cursor to click and drag to select a range of files. In all the views, you can use the band selection shortcuts from macOS. This includes command clicking to select a handful of files at the same time, clicking on one file, then shift clicking on the second to select a range. You can also then go back and command click on files to deselect them. You can go into the view settings, select view options, and here you can turn on the feature to always show file extensions. You can also change how files are grouped here as well. In the More button of the Files app, you can edit what is in the sidebar. You can also drag and drop folders to be in the Favorites section. In that same More button menu, you have two of my favorite features in the Files app. First is a scanner. This will use the camera to scan any document you have. It will auto crop it and adjust it as needed, and you can even add multiple pages to this document and save it to whatever folder you want. The second feature is Connect to Server. This is how I connect my NAS to my iPad. External drive support has been around on the iPad for a while, but there are a few misconceptions out there. First, it's completely safe to use, despite it not having an eject button. Apple wrote the external drive system for the iPad so that it wouldn't need an eject button. It's not using legacy tech like macOS. Second, drive formats like FAT do work with the iPad, but if you have access to a Mac, I would still format the drives to APFS. Third, and this is an issue, there is no way to format drives on the iPad. So if a drive is formatted for Windows, you will need a Mac to format it for APFS. Safari has a built-in Read It Later service. On any page, you can use the share sheet to send that link to a reading list. This will even save an offline version of that link. Tab groups are a great way of organizing tabs. Whenever I'm researching something or comparing products, I create a tab group. This allows me to keep tabs related to each other together. Tab groups also sync to your other devices with Safari. So that's it. Those are my tips and tricks for using the iPad. Hopefully you learned a few things from this video. If you have a tip and trick for using the iPad, something that I didn't mention, put it in the comments below. And I'm sure others would love to hear it. My thanks to Paperlike for sponsoring this video. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.